Hey everybody, just a quick message from Bald and Bonkers Network. We would like to remind everybody that certain topics of discussion may not be comfortable for all listeners. Certain viewpoints may not reflect those of our partners, sponsors, affiliates, our hosts, or that of our guests. We would like to encourage everybody to keep a respectful and open climate of discussion for all topics, no matter how disturbing they may be. So viewer discretion is advised.
In life, you never know what crystals may just lie inside what you see. This is The Inner Court, featuring Smith Family Paranormal Investigations. Uncover the gems deep inside the mysteries to see what you discover.
Hello guys, welcome. Hey Cindy. Tonight we will be talking about the changes in the difference in death and just a little different change from last week. So there is going to be some trigger warnings just because of what we are talking about. If anybody is squeamish, I do apologize. Hey Ma.
Hello.
So I will let Sherry start first.
Yeah, so really, like, obviously obviously last week we done about the Victorians and their obsession with death, and as we know, death comes into our world every day, and there are certain people that have to look after the bodies when we decease. So we thought, me and Linda thought, we would carry that show on today, and we'd do what happens to us. Because I'm sure a lot of you are curious and wondering what actually does happen to us when we're in actually the right hands of the right people. Because one thing I will say about it is always when you're looking in to your burial, whether that's going to be cremation or anything, always make sure you look into the people that are going to look after you and make sure they've got good review and stuff, because there are dodgy people out there that don't really care as much as some. And it has been proven, and there have been shows where it's been brought out. So to me, the most important thing is that you make sure that you put yourself into the right care of the right people that you trust and you feel have done a good job. They've got good references. They're very, and you're going to want that for yourself, and you're going to want that for your family that are going to have to arrange your funeral. Okay, so always make sure that you do look into stuff. So I'm going to be doing you some information on what happens to you guys when you decease, okay, and what these lovely people do to make sure that we get the best send-off that we and our families want. So I'm going to read that out to you. I'm a bit nervous. I think these sort of subjects do make us nervous because this is a bit more relevant. This isn't from the past, this is now. So
more of a sensitive subject,
Yeah. And I have got some pictures that I'm going to put up, but I put them into a structure where it's more kind to you. I don't think it was right us showing you real life pictures of people having that done to them when they've deceased. So we got sort of like what people would call a cartoon thing, but it's not a cartoon thing. It's more of a more friendly approach, as they say. So let's start. So everybody's question is what happens to us when we die. Okay, so obviously when you decease, whether that's at home or in hospital or anything like that, we always go to the mortuary, to a place where you will have your examinations done, where they will take tissue samples. They make sure that there isn't anything that's been unusual in the death. Some of these deaths can be forensic significant, so that it could have been a mysterious death or a death that wasn't expected. So there will be different procedures that are carried out. These are not normally done by the funeral directors, but it's very important we show you everything that happens. Okay, so what happens during a post-mortem, which everybody has to go through. This is normally done at the hospital or in a private place, and it says that the pathologists perform post-mortem examinations to standard set by the Royal College of Pathologists. The standards include carrying out the post-mortem in a respectful manner and with regard for the feelings of the bereaved relatives. Most postmortems are carried out by the pathologist who specialise in histopathology, which is a laboratory study of disease and of diseased tissue. Pathologists are helped by anatomic pathology technologists who have had spiritual training, specialist training to assist the pathologists. Postmortems are usually carried out in the hospital mortuary in a special postmortem examination room, which is similar to an operating theatre. In certain circumstances, these may be carried out by the local public mortuary or in a regional centre for specialist postmortems. The body will be moved respectfully from the place where the person died to the place where the examination is to be carried out. A long incision is made down the front of the body. So here and here, okay? A long incision is made down the front of the body to enable the internal organs to be removed and examined. A single incision across the back of the elbow, which is here, which is just here, is an incision there is made, which is allowing the top to be able to make the top of the skull to be able to be removed, because obviously they examine every organ and every aspect of your body. Because if there was an unmysterious death or a death that just come all of a sudden and there wasn't any category to why it happened, they will want to examine your organs to see if they can find any problems, any diseases, any illness. And some of them do take some of this tissue and use it for ongoing studies and for people that they're training and studying to do these sort of things, obviously with asking for permission first. So they make the incision in the back of the head, which allows the top of the skull to be removed so that the brain can be examined. Organs are examined carefully with the naked eye and dissected to look for any abnormalities such as blood clots or tumours. If further information is required, post-mortem stamp-sized pieces of tissue may be retained for examination under the microscope of samples of body fluids taken for analytics in laboratories. After being examined, the organs are returned to the body. Material is never retained without explicit consent from the coroner or the next of kin. The coroner might instruct the pathologist to perform further analysis on blood or tissue samples. If this is the case, the family will be informed. If the pathologist wants to keep tissues for research or teaching, they will only do so with written informed consent from the next of kin. So that would be your mum, your dad, your partner, anybody like that. Post-mortem faculties are regularly inspected to ensure that their work is to the high standards set by the Human Tissue Authority. Okay, it's these sort of people that look after you have had to go through very intense training, and they've had to sit through many exams. They have had to go to college and things like that to learn about certain things to do with the body and how you do certain things. They don't just get the job. You do have to be trained and studied to do this. It is a very intense job, and you do have to be pretty clever as well. I'm not being funny. Death in suspicious circumstances. If the death is thought to have occurred as a result of a criminal activity, then the post-mortem will be undertaken by a forensic pathologist. Forensic pathologists investigate deaths where there are medico-legal implications. For example, suspected murder, death in custody, and other complex medico-legal cases. In such circumstances, A legal defence team, e.g. the barrister or the solicitors of the accused person, can request a second post-mortem by an independent forensic pathologist. This is allowed because otherwise the accused person could allege that the post-mortem was not carried out properly, resulting in court cases being dismissed without a clear outcome. Retention of the organs and tissue. For a pathologist thinks it is necessary, the coroner will retain tissue blocks and slides. Similarly, if there is a possibility of criminal involvement in the death, the tissue may be needed by the police as evidence, separate to the need of the coroner. In both cases, the tissue samples and blocks and slides or organs may be kept for several months or in some cases years. It really does depend on the situation and how the deaths come across. Obviously, for a lot of you guys, this is not what's going to be going on, but there are people out there that sadly die for the wrong reasons. And I just think that it's really good that you guys get to know that, because then if anything, God forbid, nothing does, but if anything happens to any of you or somebody in your family, you've got a bit of knowledge of what they may have to go through. Okay. If tissue samples and organs have been retained, you should expect to be given a choice about what happens to them when they are no longer needed by the coroner. Your consent will be needed for any tissue samples or organs to be kept for further use, such as research or education and training or medical staff. So, viewing the body. You can view the body of the person who has died at any reasonable time before and after the post-mortem. After the post-mortem, mortuary staff will prepare your relative's body for you to see should you wish to. The internal examination involves an incision down the front of the body, which cannot be seen by the when the relative is dressed. There may also be an incision calculated at the back of the head, but you won't be able to see that because they would be laying down or you would be laying down. So do not be mortified, guys. Okay, but there are some hardcore procedures they do have to do. The funeral director's jobs. Preparing the deceased for viewing or visitation. This is from a funeral director themselves. The time we spend caring for someone needs does not end with death. There are many questions that must be answered after a loved one has passed, and some of those questions revolve around preparation and proper disposal of the relative's body. An individual death can be just as unique as their life, and having the right information will help you be informed as you make those important decisions. Preparation of a deceased human body can be carried out in many forms. There will be an option that will satisfy your needs, meet your religious and personal beliefs, and correctly represent the life of your loved one. What happens to the body after death? The body is removed from the place of death and brought to the funeral home. Before anything is done, the funeral home staff will obtain your permission and should explain what exactly will be done. If they do not, you should feel the liberty to ask. It's always important to know that you are the main factors of that person that you've lost, okay? So your words are their words, okay? So anything that they're wanting, that is down to you to put that forward to these people. So you would take in the wishes of your loved one or of yourself. Pictures of how you would like to look on that day, like a nice picture of you with your makeup, how you'd have your makeup done, things like that, so that they know how you would be satisfied for yourself or for your relative, okay? The first step, regardless of what type of disposition that you choose is bathing and disinfecting the body. This is done not only for safety of the funeral home staff, family and friends, but also for dignity and respect of your deceased. A human body starts to change immediately after death occurs, and bathing and disinfectant are necessary. The next step are ultimately decided by the family or friends in charge of arranging service. The body can be prepared and embalmed for traditional services, dressed and placed in refrigeration or cremation, prepared for body donation or green burials, or arrangements can be made for transportation and to another state via ground or air travel. In this case of accidental or traumatic death, autopsies or organ donations, specialist service may be required to provide resuscitation to the body. After this disputation has been chosen and the preparation has been completed, you will need to consider clothing and other mementos such as jewelry, glasses. Options will vary depending on the previous choices. Some religious beliefs will dictate simple garments or popular outfits, or you may be able to choose any style of clothing. You may use clothing previously worn by the individual, or you may purchase new. When it comes to the jewelry or the mementos, keep in mind that anything you place with the deceased, such as a wedding ring, glasses, tie clips, etc., can always be returned to you before the final disposition takes place. These items can be temporarily viewing purposes, or they can be left with the individual independently it's up to you. So in other words, they will put on the garments, the glasses for visitation reasons, so that it looks more like your loved one when you go to see them, and that they can remove that and bring that those belongings back to you, or you can choose for them to stay with your deceased loved one or yourself, and it will be buried or cremated with you. So it really is up to you. So anybody in this world knows we're all going to go to this place one day. Okay, so it's really, really important to know your plans and what you would want for your funeral, because let's face it, we never know when death's around the corner. Okay, so it's really important that you have the information you want so that you have the right burial, and it's just the same for your loved ones. Okay, it's really important to put that together and bring that together, because that is something that everybody's going to have to face. Okay, and it's really, that is the most important, is knowing what you want to happen to you. So your cremation, your burial, your green burial, whatever it is that you wish to do, you're going to need to sit down and talk to your loved ones about that, as they do with you. And they will put some sort of paperwork into place where this will be verified and will be what happens. Okay, obviously depending on the death, there will be certain situations and things that will change, will need to be done. It may be too longer for some of you to be buried, because there may be something that happens, or something's happened to your loved one. But all nonetheless, when that funeral day does come, it will be done to the standard that was expected. So it's really important you do put that stuff out there. The final step is preparing the body for private or public viewing. Cosmetics will be applied and hair will be styled according to your wishes. Always keep in mind that when making these final decisions, you have countless options. Aside from a basic, you can dictate to your funeral service professionally exactly what you want, and when it comes to your loved ones. Embalming is a method of temporarily preserving the body to make it easier to transport the body over long distance, to give survival ample time to schedule and hold funeral services, and enable the body to be viewed in an open casket. In addition to preservation, embalming helps guard against health hazards. Embalmers are licensed technicians and in most cases are also funeral directors. To embalm the body, they're injected preservatives chemicals into the circulatory system using a special machine. The blood is removed and is replaced with the embalming fluids. Refrigeration can also preserve the body, but it's not always available. If it's necessary to transport unbombed remains, they may be packed on ice. Is embalming necessary? Federal law prohibits funeral providers from misscripting the legal necessities of embalming. In fact, funeral providers are required to inform customers that embalming is not required by law, except in certain special cases, and it is unlawful to represent the embalming is required for immediate burial, direct cremation, and a closed casket funeral without viewing of visitation when refrigeration is available, if state or local laws do not require embalming. So these are the categories where you may not have to have the embalming if you're having these immediate burials or you're having an immediate cremation and closed casket. A lot of them will still clarify that it would be more important for you to actually get the embalming if you are going to have a normal burial, because the body is obviously not being cremated or it's not being given over in the green trade way. So they would normally indicate that that would be a better decision, but you can still go against that and they will respect your wishes. But in my opinion, and from what I've known from my friend that has it, the embalming is the best way to do it. And it just preserves the body. It helps them to stay more alive and look more alive for longer. You're not going to be seeing a really horrible image if you do go to view them and things like that. So embalming dates back thousands of years to ancient Egypt, where it was used for mummification in the 1800s. European scientists embalmed the bodies they used for anatomical studies in the United States. Embalming gained favor during the Civil War as a way to preserve the remains of the dead soldiers for long trips home. Some religions are opposed to embalm because they believe the body should not be altered. Part 3. What happens behind the scenes as a funeral director? Transparency. Do you ever wonder what happens behind the scenes as a funeral director, despite the fact that almost everyone will need this services of these dismal trades at some point in their life? The specific jobs duties of funeral directors often remain surrounded in mystery. So what actually does a day in the life of a funeral director involve? The first thing that is very well known for funeral directors is they will be seen going out in specialized vans that will pick up the deceased. And these vans are actually made to make it less obvious to the public of the person that's deceased, and it's out of respect for the deceased people as well and for the relatives. The reason you don't see the dead being picked up in your daily life is because they are usually transported in a specifically covered van, private ambulance, which allows animosity and serves to transport the bereaved from the place of death to the funeral director's premises. Lewisine and hearses are limousines and hearses are only used for the criminal ceremonial purposes. Okay, so limos and hearses are not used until the day of the funeral to obviously take the body of your loved one to where they're going to be either buried or they're going to be cremated. So before that, when the body's needing to be picked up, it will be picked up by a private ambulance or a private van that is normally driven by the funeral directors that are going to be in charge of your loved one or yourself. So another one that they do, the at peace look of your loved one's face took a lot of effort. Now, it takes a lot of work when somebody deceases because certain parts of the body seize up. They're not so easy to move, body parts, and certain things do need to be put into place so that the person looks like they're at peace and that they're happy. Okay, so the funeral directors say that the most important part of preparing a body for a viewing is the setting of the features, creating a peaceful facial expression with a gentle smile. But while it may look nice at the end, the work creating that appearance can be grisly. Embalmers stuff the throat with nos or with cotton and then structure the mouth shut, either using a curved needle and thread to stitch between the jawbone and the nasal cavity, which is here, okay? Or using a needle injected machine to accomplish a similar job but more quickly. So when they do that, they don't do it on the outside, darlings, okay? So do not be mortified. What they do is when they actually incision, they'll make an incision down in the bottom where they bring the needle through and it's done inside the mouth and comes up through and they bring it down. And what happens is when they bring that out of the mouth, it pulls the mouth shut and they'll tie it off. They'll stick it in, they'll make the mouth look how it should. And then obviously they'll do the makeup and stuff later. But because when we die, like I said, our bodies adjust and start changing. Everything starts to ridge, so it can't move easily. Okay, so they have to use these sort of techniques so that the person looks at peace. Because it would be pretty scary if you turned up and your loved one's mouth was open and the eyes weren't closed and stuff. You'd find that quite mortifying. And in some of these cases, this is what these poor people actually see. Okay, so they need to make that person look like they're at peace and to bring them to peace, and so that it's within viewing standard for the loved ones. Okay. Right, stuff throats, cavities, and using needles, injected machines. Right, they also use these spiked cups, and they are put underneath the eyelids on the top. What they do is they will shut your eyelids or your loved one's eyelids over it. Okay, and all of this cup does, it doesn't do anything to you, it doesn't hurt you, but all it does is it holds the eyelids in place so that they stay shut. Okay, because most people, when they're viewed, you will see them in a very pleasant and peaceful look. So they're normally sat with their eyes closed like this, and there'll be the cup underneath it. It'll just makes it look like there's more shape. And sometimes, and I know this sounds grisly, but if they don't use these sort of objects and stuff, okay, things such as the eyes can go into the head. So these are used to keep the eyes preserved and to obviously have the eyes shut. Okay, because as I said, when we normally see our loved ones or when we pass, we'll have the closed eyes and a slight smile. So you'd be like, lips are perfect and your eyes are, perfect. So they would always try to make that look, because it's pleasant and it's respectful for you as the deceased, and it's also respectful and it's more pleasant for your loved ones to be seen. Okay. So inserted under the eyes to keep the lids closed and the eyes from caving in. This is what I said, which this does happen sometimes. It's just part of life, and this happens, darlings, sometimes, so a funeral director shares the story about a year ago. A husband and wife died about 4 months apart. This wife knew us, so we buried her, and the husband knew a funeral home in a neighbouring town, so they buried him. They both had the same funeral, same coffin, etc. The family called to let us know that the other company had charged £2,000 more. Some value different costs. Call around and ask for quotes. Don't be shy. Genuine funeral directors don't mind you asking. As I said earlier, always make sure that you look into the funeral directors, get a few quotes before you make a decision. Obviously, if you've got somebody in your life that you know and you've used for previous relatives and you've been really happy with the services, then by means use them. But if you are somebody that hasn't really looked into that, do your homework first, guys. Don't just trust to put yourself or your loved one into the hands of the first person you come along. Please look into their reviews and everything else, because there are people out there that do these services and then they're not very respectful. A lot of them are not. Most of them are very good people, very caring, take their jobs very seriously, but there are a few less nice ones. Another thing are the pacemakers. Now, anybody that's got the pacemakers, the thing that's put on your heart and stuff like that, normally they will remove that from the body, because if being cremated or anything like that, it could actually explode, which can cause a lot of damage to the cremation machine. Okay, and you don't want that. So normally the people that do the autopsy and the examinations of the body will remove this from you or your loved one before the funeral of choice takes place. And sometimes the funeral directors can do it as well. It really does depend. Some funeral directors rarely see the deceased. There are directors that work in this line of industry and very rarely are around the bodies because they're busy doing other things. So you've got a large part of the funeral director's job involves papers pushing, dealing with coroners, filling death certificates, editing obituaries and listings with churches and crematoriums. So these people sometimes will only see a dead person when they are delivered for the service. In these cases of some corporate companies, a funeral director could literally go years without seeing a dead body, because there are different directors in these lines of work that work in different places. When you automatically hear funeral director, you automatically think that a funeral director is somebody that works with the body, cleans the body and does all those things. Yes, some of them do, but there are some that do the more hands-on things, like preparing the funeral, driving the cars, doing things like that. There are so many aspects to this business. They are masters of lighting. Now, in a lot of cases, when they do the makeup and that, it looks very beautiful and very pleasant, but it still doesn't quite give that effect of the rosy cheeks and that person is still breathing. Okay, so they will normally use very beautiful lighting, and they're very good with the eye at seeing that, because it's really important that when people actually are visited by their loved ones, to see them while they're in their time of rest, it's very important for that person to look very much like how they remember them to look. Okay, so they will use certain lighting in some cases to just illuminate the skin and the makeup and to make them look more like they're not deceased. Okay, although the formaldehyde used for embalming does contain a rosy dye to help restore greying, lifeless flesh to the more natural tone, it is not always enough, and sometimes it is necessary to use coloured lighting when setting the body out for visitation purposes. a lot of you probably wonder what happens to our fluids and things that are in our body when we actually pass away, and these people do these experiments and stuff on us, and look over us and make sure that everything's in place and how it should be. The truth is that when you're embalmed and when you have your blood removed and things like that, it actually goes down a special drain that is in the mortuary where they are because obviously the mortuary is the place to do that, because there is a certain place and a time for bodies to be looked over and done. A lot of people are not advised to have people done at home. That side of it normally would be done in a mortuary or in some sort of funeral director home. Okay, so when they're doing that, they have special tables that you or your deceased loved one will lay on. They sort the body out. Any fluids or anything that they remove from the body does go down a special drain to get rid of the toxins, because when the body actually passes over, the organs and stuff do start to get toxins in it, and some of that can be very dangerous to us as the living. Okay, although you might think the chemicals and the body fluids involved in embalming would be disposed of as a hazardous substance, you might be surprised to know that all waste is disposed of directly down a drain. In indication to causing relatively minor problems such as sinus issues and rashes, formaldehyde is carcinogen, and people with high levels of exposure, such as embalmers, are at high risk of cancers and other more dangerous forms of cancer like leukemias and things like that, guys. They are prone to that. Not saying that they do get it, but because they are working with some hazardous chemicals to a living body, this could be expected.
And working with bodies like that, they will have their aprons on, their gloves on.
Aprons,
So,
masks.
yeah, so they're not working with them in their street
They
clothes.
normally have cloaks.
It is
things on.
Yeah. So they are
even the funeral directors do as well when they have to do that. Some customers will dislike the idea of embalming or have environmental concerns. Choose a green burial. Alongside the often comes the romantic idea about being buried beneath a tree. Perhaps the stately oak. But the truth is, the body must be buried at least 4 feet from a tree to protect the roots system. Because, as you know, even though we have our bodies embalmed or we are set to a standard where we are not going to compose anything, in time, our bodies will start to deteriorate and will start to disintegrate, and the coffin will start to disappear as well over time. This takes a long time, but you got to think things such as trees, plants and stuff like that can be here for hundreds and thousands of years. Okay. And now you imagine how much disposal of deterioration could expose to the roots of those plants, those trees. And those plants and trees are things that we use, that we can eat and live off. So having a deceased loved one's body directly under a tree just can't happen because of safety reasons and stuff. Right, where was I? They have to be at 4 feet from the tree to protect its root system. It's a bit of an adjustment from people who are committed to the image of being buried under a tree, but that's not always the most green option for the tree. Wouldn't they rather allow the tree to continue to live? You can, however, plant new trees or shrubs up on top of the grave after a burial, and the roots will grow down over the body. So you can find other ways of doing it. When you go into cremation, some of these people are actually taking it to a level where there is that new method where they make them into soil, and they grow a tree. Okay, so they grow a tree from your loved one. So it's a way of symbolizing freedom, and it's a way of just showing people that their loved one is still out there. It's a place for them to be able to come and remember them, and future relatives as well. So there are some beautiful ways. You've got the green way, which is where you're took to a special building where they will preserve your body, wash it, do all the same things as what a funeral director do. But the only difference is you're put into some sort of pod funeral casket, along with mud and flowers and other things, and your body is actually left to deteriorate in a pleasant way and become soil or moss itself, and then it can be used for the environment. Okay, which I think is a really beautiful way. It is hard to be a funeral director's friend. Any friend might disappoint you once in a while, but a funeral director will probably do it more often. They might miss your birthdays, parties, or have to cancel going to a much awaited event, or leave in the middle of a dinner. Deaths have this way of keeping an untimely schedule, whether it's being in the middle of a wedding or in the middle of night. When death calls, they have to respond. That is their job. They can't ignore a call when somebody passes away. They can't ignore that and leave it for a couple of days. With these sort of jobs and these people that do these work, when death calls, they literally do have to drop whatever they're doing, and they have to be ready to pick that deceased person up, to prepare them, because at that time, that becomes more important, because that is their job and that is what they're trained to do. So people that are friends with directors will know that they have a very uncertain schedule, because they are so busy with death every single day. So
And preserving and holding the body, and
all of that. They can't just sit there and go, hello, yep, okay, I'll come and pick it up in 2 days time. They have to go there and then.
It's a very timely thing, because if not, then all the more it can do that's holding the body is put them in the refrigerator and hope it helps.
Yeah, exactly. So they do have to be pretty hands-on straight away. They have to work with the bodies. They have to get the bodies back and get them preserved, because as me and Linda explained last week, and I've said again in this show, the body does start to change and certain smells will start coming off of it. So the funeral directors and people like that are really, really important when it comes to the time of death. They really are. Like our life and our loved ones put our lives in those people's hands.
Just like if they don't get the body within the first 5 hours of death, it starts the decaying.
The coloration starts to happen.
Right. It will start to, the first thing is to bloat. And once it bloats,
and the bloating.
Right. Yeah. It's hard to, I guess, take that bloat away from the deceased, which is very sad. And when they are done with the embalming and getting ready, they actually have family members bring a photo that is very recent. That way they can either do the makeup to how they used to wear it or like it, what they were used to, and their facial expressions, so they can try to get their features as close as possible as normal. So when family members and even now young ones go and see the deceased at a viewing, then they're not so scared. It looks like they're sleeping.
Yeah, exactly. And it does take a lot of work to preparize a body for that. And believe me, a lot of skill. Okay. Yeah. And you've got to have a stomach and a strong mind and things like that. I was just saying to Linda before I came on, I said, a lot of people think that funeral directors don't have emotion and feelings, but they really do. The fact is they go through a very intense training, because they have to work with the public every day. Okay. So they need to be able to keep themselves preserved, to keep themselves together, because the family's already going to be going through enough. Okay.
Right.
So their time to feel the emotions and to feel the loss
Yeah.
is when the doors are closed and nobody's about anymore. Believe me, funeral directors do have emotion and feelings. I remember my friend, because of her family doing that, she got to an age where she could start working in there with her mum and dad. As a young girl, she'd watch and learn, but when she got to an age where she was starting to train and that, and there was a few occasions where she would ring and say that she did experienced a really horrible death, and it really affected her in some really bad ways. The same with her mum and dad, but they just have to learn to not show that emotion at the time when the family are there and when they are preparing the deceased, because a lot of funeral directors believe that when the deceased person is there, they want to bring that sense of love and positivity around them. So you'll find that a lot of the funeral directors, when they're preparing the body and doing the makeup and that, they'll put very peaceful music on, put candles on, they put things on to make that environment very friendly, and they normally continue to do so for when the relatives come and see the bodies as well.
Yeah.
They work very, very hard to make sure that you yourself or your loved one is comfortable
Yeah.
and respected. Okay, so it is traditional in a funeral industry to provide funerals to families of the stillborn babies and very young infants at a cost. Okay, now a lot of people think that funeral directors make a lot of money from the deaths of children, and that there's been some scrutiny over that, and it's rubbish, guys. Right? Okay, these guys, the one thing that they dread more than anything when it comes to any burial, and they dread, obviously all of us they care about and become entwined with, because they have to look at us and look after us in our last moments of time. Okay, but when it comes to being children, they get really affected by that, very, very affected by that. If they didn't have to charge you for the funerals of children, they wouldn't.
No.
But it is their business and they have to. Okay, and believe me, they do feel those things really badly. Funeral directors do not care to make a profit off the death of a child, and in fact, the death of a young child saddens the whole company more than almost anything else. And it must be a very difficult situation to see. And some funeral homes have have therapy dogs as well. Okay, so some of these facilities will use things such as comforting bereavement dogs and stuff like that, or they'll have some other case for bereavement that they use while they're dealing with the relatives. A lot of them do go along the lines of like grief therapy dogs, because it gives that kind of that comfort and something for like the relatives to fuss and to cuddle and make them just feel a little bit better in themselves, because death is a really tragic time
It
for a
is.
family and a very
Especially
hard
when it's
one to have to
unexpected.
face. But
Definitely.
so the first thing that they do when you'll pass away, they'll pick you up in the van. Okay, they'll take you back to the funeral home. You'd have had your procedure to do with having the organs removed and things like that, having all your forensic stuff done. That would have been done. You'd have been sewn back up, and you'd have been made ready for the funeral directors to come and get you. You'll be picked up by a van. You will then be taken to the place where you're going to be put to rest until your funeral. And in that place, they will then wash you and disinfect you for health reasons and for respect out of the deceased. Then from that, they will then go on to do such things as shaving you, any of your hair that you wouldn't normally have on your face or on your hand or whatever it is. They'll do any shaving. They will normally sew the mouth and put the mouth together and position it in the way that they need to. Then the embalming will be done, if it is necessary and the family want that doing, okay, or they will preparize the body for the cremation and things like that, which they would normally put the body into a refrigerator, or they'll use it by putting ice over them or stuff like that, just to preserve the body until the time of dressing, okay. But for most people, they go for the embalming. So what they would do is do the incisions to the back of the head, and obviously they've got this bit here that they do where they open it and stuff. Well, that will all be covered with a blanket. They'll just have you laying down onto a special table, and they will have a machine which they incision into your belly first to make sure that no bloating goes on, as what Linda was saying. You'll also have one that is put to the top of your leg, which is your calf up here. And you normally have one put somewhere in the side of your body or into your arm area. And what they do is they will remove any of, they will embalm you. And so what they would do is remove any of the blood or any of the liquids that are within your body. They will normally pop any of your organs so that all of the toxins come out. And that will then be replaced with this machine, with the incisions, with the embalming fluid. Okay. Now this embalming fluid will act as like what blood would. So it will bring a colouring back to the skin because it's got dyes and things inside it. They will then go in to make an incision at the top of your abdomen and in your chest area to bring and fill that out and to make that look less deflated, because when they remove the toxins and the liquids from your organs, you do deteriorate a little bit. So that's the main reason they use the embalming, is to make you feel fulfilled again and make you look normal again, and also to preserve your body so you don't start to deteriorate, because no relative wants to see their loved one looking like that. So they will do the embalming and stuff and everything. Then after that, they will remove you into a more pleasant room with normally music and candles and stuff like that. And they will put your makeup on with you dignitely covered so that your body's not showing, obviously. They will do your makeup, they'll do your hair, they'll dye it, they'll do your toenails. If you're a female, males, they'll just make you, like your eyebrows and stuff neat. They'll make you look like you're alive, but you're just sleeping. They'll do all of that sort of stuff first. Then it moves on to the clothing that the relatives would bring in to you, or you would bring in for your loved one. They would dress them in that clothing that you've chosen, and they will put you as the deceased or your loved one into the casket, into a peaceful position with the hands normally about here or up here. They normally put the hands there. You've got by then you've got all of the look of the piece, full look. You've got the makeup, all the hair's done. They look like your loved ones, but just sleeping. Okay. So once they do that, they normally put it into the chapel of rest, which is where people can come in and see you, or you can see your loved ones. They'll normally have things like candles and a very light music going on, and you can have your time with your loved ones, whether you're the person that's deceased or you're the person saying goodbye to your deceased loved one. That's your time together. And then the next part is bringing you for that faithful burial and making sure that you're sent off in the most pleasant and most beautiful way for you and for your loved ones. And that is the end of my writing bit. I don't know if you want me to quickly show the pictures so they can kind of see.
You can if you want.
The thing.
We do have a couple more minutes.
It's going to be it'll be like a couple of seconds, Linda, literally. If I got it up. Yeah, I have got it up. Let me just bring it up on the screen. So I'm just going to show you quickly the more pleasant sides of when this stuff happens to us. Okay, guys? Because I think if we'd have showed you the proper way,
real deal,
we
would have been taken off.
It's not for your eyes, guys. Seriously, like. So I've got the more pleasant way of showing you. So here it is. Okay. So first, obviously, you would be at the mortuary. They would cut your clothing off, whatever.
Wait a minute.
They'll do all of the. Huh?
I don't know.
Oh, can you see that?
Yeah, it's it's a little faded, but I see it.
This is like a body that's laying on a table at a hospital or whatever. So this is just after somebody's died. So what they would do is they'd cut your clothing off. They would prep you, do the autopsy, remove the organs, like I said, and make sure that there's no disease or anything. Take any tissue samples, whether this is a normal death or it's a suspicious one. They'll do this. So this is the first part that happens. Then let me go back over here. Where am I? Because I can't find the next part is obviously they've done all of the mortuary stuff. You're now at the funeral director's home, and they've got you laying out onto the special table or special bed that they would use to remove any of the blood and embalm you and stuff. So this is you waiting on the table for your bath. Okay, so cause first they would bath you, shower you,
They would wash the body in disinfecting solution.
and doing the disinfectant, which is what this bottle is. So first they would use the water and stuff, and then they would do the disinfectant over the top of you just to make sure that everything is in place. So this would be them disinfecting you and bathing you. Then it will go on to another one where they just wash over that and make sure that everything's in place and sorted. They do all of your eye, so they'll put the cups in your eyes so that your eyelids will be closed. They do the sewing of your mouth. They bring you to that prospect of the peaceful look. Okay, they will do any shaving, making you representable for your funeral and for your loved ones to see you. So they'll do all that preparation first before the embalming. Then they will make the incisions into the top of the arm, into the side of the leg, and normally somewhere like round near your stomach area, because they need to stop the bloating. So they will make slight incisions, including the one that you would have had at the mortuary on the front of you and at the back of your head. So then they would insert this special tool into your stomach area, which is circled here. This takes any toxins that's come from your stomach, your liver, your intestines, any of those sort of areas, and they will remove any of the liquid. They will do it by popping each organ, removing the toxic liquids, and then when it comes to embalming, it will be replaced by the embalming fluid. Okay, so these are some of the procedures that they would do.
And when they
to your body,
when they do the organs, they have to be really quick with it, because if the gases and toxins get in the skin, it will start the deterioration process a lot quicker.
It's not something that they take very long to do. They literally, when the body turns up, pretty much straight away, they start to do all of that sort of work onto you. They will, as I said, they will pop the organ areas and remove the toxins from the body anyway. They do that pretty quickly and quite prompt. Then after doing all of that is when they will go into the process of doing the embalming. Okay, so then they will embalm you if you're wanting to be embalmed, or they'll put you on cold ice, or they'll put you in a refrigerator. It really does depend on how you're being buried. If you're going to be a very quick burial, then they would just wash you, prepare you. They wouldn't normally embalm unless asked to, and they'll do the makeup. They'll do everything the same way. But if it's going to be a more hands-on funeral and really quick, then they don't go to that level. They still do a very high-class look after you, but they don't do as much as somebody that they've got to hold for a week or so. So then, as I said, they'll go on to doing your makeup after you've been embalmed, and you're put into your place of rest. They'll start doing all of the makeup, your hair. They'll make you look presentable for your funeral and for your loved ones. In this time, they use some very artistic ways to make you look very living like. It takes a lot of work and a lot of time, and it all really does depend on the sort of way that you passed away as well. For instance, if you went through such things as accidents and stuff like that, then there would be other things like where you would have certain people that come in and do the molding side of it, where they may have to rebuild somebody's face, or somebody might have lost part of an arm or something, and they need to make it look more presentable for the loved one, they would normally do that. If not, they would normally recommend and would advise you to maybe not come and see the loved one, or if you do, to be prepared, because they couldn't quite get the look that they wanted. For a lot of people, they decide, if that's the case, just to have the person in the coffin and the coffin shut, and people just come and touch the coffin and tell the person they love them and things. But if somebody is wanting to be open casket, they would normally only say that would be okay if the person does look preserved, and it's not going to be upsetting in a disturbing way. So they're normally 9 times out of 10, like I said, you look reasonably normal when you pass away. So normally it'd be okay to see somebody in person. But it does, again, there are people that are less unfortunate, and it has to be done another way, but still just as beautiful and important. So makeup, then they'll get you dressed. And like I said, they'll play music, candles and things around to bring that atmosphere of positivity and peace and love into the room of your deceased loved one. It helps them, as the people that are having to prepare the body. It keeps them focused. It helps them to work, because this is a very stressful time for directors and funeral people, and it can be a very upsetting time. So it's really important that they have that sort of thing around them, as well as for the deceased person as well. And the last part, they will put you or your loved one into your casket of rest, and you will be set up in a special room within the funeral home, where it will be very beautiful. There'll be candles and things, a very light music playing. And this is the time when the loved ones and yourself get to share that last moment together, and say your goodbyes and your little memories that you have. And then normally after this, they would shut the casket, and they would do it so that it's shut firmly and will not be opened again. And they will normally have your loved one stored ready for the funeral.
Yeah. It's definitely, bring us back up. It's definitely a hard and tough time for a lot of loved ones to go through this, especially when it pops up unexpectedly and you don't expect it, or if they are dying from a disease, or the worst one, cancer, or, something that we can't control. But doing the viewing just puts a lot of people at peace, just knowing that they're not suffering anymore. They're not, in any type of pain. Hey, they did that about 20 years ago to my uncle and godfather. He committed suicide and used a gun. Yeah. So I remember this.
They do a lot of things.
Yeah, this is
and it's really difficult.
George.
It is difficult.
My mother was talking about, said about 20 years ago, her uncle / godfather had committed suicide. He used a gun, and they had to do a whole face reinition because it was pretty bad. So
and they normally will have specialised people that do that, because you've got different parts to the funeral directors and stuff like that. You have people that don't directly work in the funeral home, but they come in when they're needed and things like that. And it would normally be people that have to do the moulding of the skin, because in some cases, as Linda's mum's godfather, his death was obviously a very horrific one, and he was in a bad place. So they would have had to do a lot of work to reconstruct that part of his body.
They did a wonderful
but they do
job.
some amazing stuff, guys, and they are very highly trained and very, very, very good at what they do. Very, very good. And even down to just normal funeral directors that do the makeup, even after being structured, they still have to make them look lifelike. And, the work that they do is...
The time and the effort they put in.
They are truly good people. They are. They are. And they do have feelings, and they do care and things. It's just they have to be professional.
Yeah, I believe that they put their emotions and their feelings in their work, and that's why they were.
That's what they do. I'm not going to say that they don't cry, because they do. Okay, because I have had my friend phone me up in bits over certain cases she's had to work on. But at that moment in time, that's why there is such thing as putting the candles and the music and things. It's things to keep them focused and to keep them strong. Because when they're working in that line of work, you have to be respectful to the deceased and to the loved ones. And you sitting there in pieces is not going to help the situation at all. They have to be focused, and it takes a lot of training.
Yeah,
if you're somebody that's emotional, squeamish, can't deal with things like that, it would not be the job for you. Not that's part of it. Maybe the secretary and talking to the families, maybe, but again, it's emotions. If you're hearing a story about what's happened, are you going to be able to keep yourself together? To help them. It's a very strict business, but they do care. They do.
They absolutely do, and they show that a lot of caring to the families and how they deal with their coping, and they're there with them. I mean, they were there with my daughter.
You see that through the funerals, because if you think about it, yes, you've come in, you've gave all the paperwork over, the pictures, all of that, but they've sorted your loved one's body. Okay, they're the ones that sorted your church, the name you've gave. They're the one that sorted the sort of ceremony you want. They're the ones that's made sure that your flowers you want there are there, things like that. So they really do care about you and your loved one, and they believe that a death is just as important as a life. So.
Well, guys, I do appreciate everybody coming in today. It has been an awesome show. Awesome. But we are going to get ready to hop off, and maybe we'll do a part 2. We'll see if there's any topics, because it is October. Any Halloween, spooky stuff you want us to do, let us know. It'll be a fun month.
Sweet Jesus, I've done the whole bloody show. Sorry, sis.
I know.
Yeah. You know what I'm like when I do the bloody research and that. Oh my God.
Yeah,
I thought I'd only been half an hour doing it.
Huh?
And I just looked at the time and I'm like, what? An hour and 7 minutes. Oh, shit.
Yeah.
Sorry. So I do apologise. I only thought I'd been on half an hour.
No, longer than a half hour, hon. But it's all good, because it was a lot of good information. So we will do a part 2 on this. I do have a very touching story that I would love to share with everyone.
And it will be Linda's show. I'll just sit there and look pretty.
No, you're fine. We have a lot of information. We both digged and got a lot of information on both sides. So trust me, if I were to start, I'd probably do the same thing.
Yeah, I didn't even expect it to take that long, but
it's fine. Yeah, so you're good.
It's something I'm passionate about. So I know people that are in that work.
Yeah. I will definitely set us up another show whenever you're available.
I'm available whenever
everybody
you want
in Florida. I know this is off topic, but everybody in Florida could definitely use the prayers right now. One of our friends, Ken, is down there with his spouse, so they definitely need their prayers at the moment, because right now they're in a hotel. So my niece is down there also with her 3 babies. So there's a lot of people suffering. So just keep that in mind when you guys pray tonight.
Yeah, when you're on your knees, think of them guys, because they are being hit really badly with storms and stuff at the minute.
And I just got word that there's another one right behind it.
Yeah, and obviously you, Linda, you're probably going out your mind at the minute because of that, and obviously lovely Ken, which is really important to all of us. Stay safe, and we are praying. And guys, pray. Yeah,
absolutely. For anybody that's going through it,
to show some love.
But we will see you guys on the next. Oh, there we go. The next show.
See you later.
Love you guys.
Blessings.